Hey, campfire crew, let's get it on. Terrifying Night by Umami Tsunami. This story won't contain any graphic depictions of sexual acts, but there is a sexual nature to it, so trigger warning there. It'll make more sense once I'm telling the story. This happened about 14 years ago. At the time, I had just moved to South Carolina and had a really close friend just across the border in North Carolina. I was 15 at the time and an emancipated minor, so I had my own apartment, but I typically spent a lot of time staying at my friend's house. I'm a severe insomniac, so I tend to stay up pretty late. I've tried various sleeping medications, which I can no longer take because most of them cause severe hallucinations for me. Tried cannabis, and even had a period in my life where I dabbled with opiates. But at that particular time in my life, though, I wasn't doing any of those things. I was completely sober for this. It was just another one of those nights, staying up late, playing League of Legends, watching YouTube videos, etc., and it was about 3 a.m., and I heard a knock at the door. The neighborhood I was in was particularly bad. There was a house that was just 2 or 3 houses down the road that was clearly a crack house. All the windows were boarded up, and they were using lanterns instead of electric lights. Random dude digging holes in the yard from time to time. You get the picture. I looked out the window to see who was knocking at the door, and there was a naked woman there. I opened the door and realized she was covered in blood. She couldn't tell me who she was, where she was, or how she got there. All she could really express was how afraid she was. So I brought her in. I gave her a towel to cover herself, which we let her keep, and I woke my friend up and then called the police. They took 30 minutes to show up, but when they did, they took her away. I found out a week later that when they took her back to the police station, they did several blood tests as well as a rape kit. This girl had inhuman amounts of several drugs in her system. Crack, meth, heroin, Xanax. It's amazing she was even able to breathe, let alone walk. The rape kit also came back positive. As it turned out, this girl had escaped from that crack house. They were holding her prisoner or something, and I can only imagine the trauma that girl must have experienced. It scared the shit out of me at the time. But looking back, I'm glad I went against my better judgment. And that crack house, it got raided about a month after that whole thing. And as far as I know, the house is now abandoned. Scariest Lyft Ride I've Ever Given by generic name. For context, I'm a 29-year-old male to female who presents as masculine for work-related things like rideshare. Basically, this means I don't generally get tilted by people calling me he, him because, well, I don't pass. Anyway, I use both apps, Uber and Lyft, and your girl usually doesn't have any problems. The riders are generally pretty nice and are quiet, and honestly, I enjoy giving rides. It's not a lot of money, but it's enough in between paychecks at my big girl job to be enjoyable to do it when I can. However, as I was cruising off from a ride, I got a new request for like $20 or $30. Not uncommon, but sometimes that means it's far as shit. This one was only 45 minutes, so not too bad. Plus, money. So I was driving to pick up the pin, and it's at a decently fancy Japanese grill and a kind of run-down dispensary. I parked out of the way of traffic and hit arrive. 2 minutes, nobody. 3 minutes, someone walked up and she got to my door. Now, here's where the scary shit starts. She didn't immediately open the door. She reached for the handle, sure. But then she proceeded to lean completely forward against my rear passenger door and laugh. She was laughing into the paint. Then she bent all the way backwards to the point that her legs were almost 45 degrees with her torso. She opened the door, and apparently my last rider left something in the back seat. She stopped laughing and started snickering. I hit her with, "Hi, are you blank's name?" in my forced masculine voice. In a creepily cutesy voice she said, "Yeah, that'd be me. Someone dropped a thing in your back seat, Mr. Uberman." I noticed and then asked her to hand it to me so I could keep it in the front seat with me. I could return it to the other person later. "Oh, damn, guess she must have left it by accident," I said. She stared not at me, but at the rear-view mirror and said, "Ain't you gonna call her?" I told her that I would do it when a request came in to return it, like I usually did. Now, quick aside to explain the characterization of this woman I've made so far. I'm not going out of my way to be any kind of prejudice. She legitimately spoke that way, and beyond just a country vernacular. She spoke as if she couldn't read well. And as someone who's worked with people with traumatic mental disorders and people who are severely mentally disturbed or neurodivergent as a volunteer, I try my best to not be annoyed or be a bitch in those situations. Anyway, we headed off towards her destination pin, 45 minutes away. First red flag because the others so far could just be a rider being weird or drunk. She asked me to stop at a UPS store on our way to her destination. No biggie, right? Here's the issue. She didn't specify where, just the UPS. As I opened up Google Maps to find the nearest one, she said, "Oh, you don't have to, but I have to get my friend out of jail. If I don't get this package, he's going to be there overnight." "Oh," I said, not getting what the package had to do with jail, but was playing along. "Well, it's just you gonna be there all night if we don't get him out. You're gonna kill somebody. He in jail for killing." What the fuck? When I freaked out visibly but not audibly, she smiled and said, "Oh, we don't have to go there. Let's keep going back on the road. I know you Uber guys gotta make your money." "Yeah, Uber drivers don't got a lot of money, do they?" Well, that was a weird pivot, but we kept going and I nervously laughed and said, "Yeah, but I don't mind if you need me to stop." Wrong move. She continued to stare at me from the rear view every time I glanced back. We were on the highway before she said anything. "I likes this car. What car this be?" I told her. "Oh, it's nice. You like this car?" I nodded and said, "Yep, it's a nice car." Then she turned to the empty seat next to her and started arguing with the air. "No, it's his car." "No, I don't think he wants to do that. Stop it." I finally said, "Everything okay?" And she said, "Oh, my friend just say this car is nice." "Oh," I said back. I was a bit freaked out by it, but whatever. I mean, people are weird, and it's not unusual for a grown woman to have imaginary friends. Then she said, "Mr. Uberman, do you think it's okay to steal if you have to?" I just shrugged and said, "I mean, what do you mean?" She responded, "Like, if I was in a local grocery store and wanted bread, I should be able to take it, right? Especially if I work there." I shrugged again. She went on, "I ain't no thief. It's 'cause I needs it." Then she turned around and yelled at my trunk, "I got money, right, Mr. Uberman? I got a job, so I got money." She was visually getting more agitated. She then turns to Trunk Cunt and says, "What? No, you tell her to simmer down now. He's a nice man." And then went on this long rant about how she's not a vagabond, that she has a job, so she's not poor, but that poor people like to pretend they're not poor, switching from the seat next to her to Trunk Cunt. Eventually, she smirked, and it was kind of off-putting because she was missing teeth. Now, do I necessarily care if someone was talking to themselves in a Lyft ride? No. I don't judge people. Life is hard. But when her imaginary friends start to sound like they want me to die, yes, I do mind. I don't like being alive, but I'm not going to let someone else decide that. So I was driving and keeping to myself, and she smirked in the rear view and said in a scarily soft voice, "Ain't you sleepy? Are you hungry, honey? They say you're real sleepy. Do you like boba?" I was now gripping the steering wheel and avoiding eye contact. "Oh, no, I'm okay. Thanks for the offer, though." "I'll pay if we stop," she said in her sing-song voice from earlier. "Let's stop. Maybe you could even pull over and nap for a bit." She was baring her teeth at that point, and I was internally screaming that I wanted this ride over ASAP. But $20 is $20, so we kept driving. "Well, you killed her, so it is what it is," she said randomly to Trunk Kun. So, new intel. She was talking to dead people. I mean, holy spaceballs, now I was even more apt not to stop. We got to a stop sign and she stared at the headrest and leaned forward. Oh, I forgot to mention, all of this was happening while she was sitting directly behind me. She leaned forward and stuck out one bony finger and poked my shoulder. "How does your body feel, Mr. Uberman?" "Huh, you sure you don't want something to eat? I could feed you if you just pulled over somewhere." So it was like the 10th time she tried to get me to stop, and then she said, "He's sleepy, ain't he? You go kill someone if you don't get some sleep. Someone gonna die." "Mm-hmm. You got two choices. You choose." I asked, "Who is going to kill someone?" She looked aware and got an angry face. "Nothing, no one," she said. So, eventually, after being death stared at and her imaginary ghost friends talking about robbing and or killing me, we got to her destination and she got out. "Aw, thank you for being so patient. Make sure you don't forget to eat," she said with a deliberate pause. Then she came around to my window and smiled against the glass. I drove home and didn't drive Lyft for a week. So, to the lady who kept trying to get me to pull over to sleep with her in the car, let's not meet. Something Watching Me, submitted by Jacqueline M. This is my best friend's story. My name is Jacqueline, and I'm the friend Jay she mentions. In the summer of 2023, I was at a camp for my youth group. On the second night, I had been sitting at the campfire with a couple of leaders, a few of the girls, and some of the boys. Some of the guys started to talk about skinwalkers, wendigos, Bigfoot, etc., and I was 11 at that point, and I started getting uncomfortable. I wanted to go back to my tent, but it was dark and we were surrounded by the darker woods. 20 minutes later, I thought, fuck it, and I walked to my tent and climbed inside. I got inside and then thought, damn it, because two of the girls were talking about sleep paralysis demons. All three of us have sleep paralysis, and they were talking about scary stories and other stuff. I was slightly upset that I had left the warm fire to get away from the unnerving stories. But then I told some stories myself, and eventually one of the girls fell asleep. They had started the entire conversation about the sleep paralysis demons. Me and the other girl, we'll call her Jay, started talking. We eventually said it was time to go to bed, but we both had to use the restroom. It was around midnight or 1-ish. We stepped out of our tent, and we got an overwhelming feeling that we were being watched. And for some context, we were in the middle of nowhere, and I start to shiver when I'm cold or I feel something paranormal is around. It was about 40 degrees outside, so I was thinking, okay, I'm just cold. But halfway to the restrooms, my friend Jay and I froze. We both started shaking and crying. My friend at the time was 15, and she said, let's say a prayer. So we began to walk slowly, and as we prayed and cried a bit, we finally reached the restrooms. However, we only had one flashlight, so we were standing outside with that one flashlight, wondering what to do. when we both suddenly got a feeling to get around people or inside somewhere. At that point, I was afraid, and it felt like I was going to shit my pants, so we both threw open a door and ran in, locking the door behind us. Jay turned around and pointed the flashlight at the ceiling while I used the restroom, and then we switched places. None of this is weird, because we've been best friends for about 6 years at that point. Eventually, we left the restrooms and headed over to the fire. And after about 10 minutes of sitting extremely close to said fire with a coat on, I was still shaking. We stayed at the fire till 2 in the morning, and then we started heading back to our tent, saying another prayer for extra protection. Once we got there, we calmed down and eventually fell asleep. I don't know whether it was a demon, skinwalker, or something else with evil intentions, but whatever it was, it scared the fuck out of me and my friend, who has a few true scary stories herself. Please wish me luck, because I always run into some scary things in the woods or while I'm camping, and I have to go back into the woods in June. So to the thing that was in the woods watching us, I hope I never encounter you again. Hello, I'm Jacqueline, the said best friend in the story, or Jay, if you will. I just wanted to add some things. As we were walking away from the tent, we made the mistake of looking behind us and saw something we weren't too sure of. We kept hearing odd noises and sticks breaking and disembodied voices, and much more. Once we got to the fire, there were some boys there and some of our group leaders that we expressed our concerns to. They talked to us about so much, and obviously I kept checking on my best friend to make sure she was okay. Once we left the fire, I looked back at the area where the restrooms were and saw whatever it was watching us again walk to our tent. Not moving, just watching, knowing that it couldn't do anything. But as we had prayed, I seemed to cast out anything negative that could have caused harm. Backroads of Washington by Lehek. So, last night I was driving home from Bellingham, Washington, and decided to take the back roads instead of the freeway. Bad idea in hindsight. I was tired, and the thought of dealing with high-speed highway traffic at night didn't sound fun, so I figured the scenic route would be more chill. It was not chill. For the most part, the drive was uneventful, but there were 4 moments that genuinely freaked me out. I'm sharing them because I need to process, and maybe someone else has had something similar happen. 1, there was a weird light behind me. At one point, I saw a strange light in my rearview mirror trailing me. I thought maybe it was a car, but it turned off before I could tell what it really was, and probably just headlights. Probably. 2, shadow figure? I came around a bend and saw a moving shadow on the wall and trees, and for a half a second it looked like a shadowy thing was running alongside me around the turn. Again, probably just a shadow, but my brain went full nope. 3, a random guy with a wagon. I saw a homeless-looking man just walking down the side of the road around twilight, dragging a little wagon behind him. I mean, not scary by itself, but given we were in the middle of nowhere, it definitely gave me that wrong place, wrong time vibe. And 4, this one. This was easily the worst moment. It was pitch black out, and I was still like an hour from home, driving through foresty nothingness, messing with my music for half a second. And suddenly, I caught a pair of headlights in my rearview mirror. Close headlights. And I got that panicky, someone's way too close feeling. And out there, that's super rare. It's not like the freeway where people tailgate all the time. I was going around 40 miles an hour at the time, so I sped up to 60, thinking they'd either pass or back off. They didn't. They just kept following. I sped up again, 75, maybe even up to 80. They stayed right there behind me. We were coming up on a turn, and I realized I couldn't safely take it at that speed, so I braked. Hard. The car behind me almost slammed into me, and then, like they thought I was brake checking them, they suddenly started gunning it behind me even harder. I seriously thought this was it. Either this person was trying to run me off the road or I was going to crash trying to lose them. And finally, after what felt like forever but was probably 2 minutes, they flipped on their blinker and just turned right. Gone. Poof. No idea who they were, what they wanted, or why the hell they were trying to race me through the backwoods of Washington. So, for that ride, 0 out of 10, do not recommend. Backroads of Washington are haunted or cursed or something. Let's Not Meet Again, Gabriel or Mark or Carl, by Pneumo Court Pro. This happened between 2013 and 2020. I'm now 27. I'm a female. When I was 16, I played a lot of League of Legends, like a lot. I was in Facebook groups, constantly looking for new people to play with, discussing builds. You get the idea. That's how I met Gabriel. He lived in another city nearby, but we had a mutual friend, Valerie, a girl from my neighborhood who was around my age. We started chatting on Facebook and Skype, and sometimes playing League of Legends together. Eventually, Valerie invited me to her birthday party. Her house was just around the corner, so of course I went. Gabriel was there. We clicked instantly, but at some point during the night, he tried to get me alone in a dark room. You know for what. I said no and reminded him that I had a boyfriend, and that was that. And over time, he became more invested in my life. I didn't have many friends, so he quickly became my best friend. He'd visit my city often, stay over at my house, and we talked constantly. We'd watch shows, game together, have dinner. It felt like a great friendship. Or so I thought. Looking back, the shift happened gradually and so subtly that I barely noticed. But thinking about it now makes my stomach turn. It really began around 2016, right after my mom passed away. Gabriel would accidentally touch me. He started greeting me with kisses way too close to my mouth. And he'd compliment me, but then twist it like, "You're so beautiful. If only you lost a bit of weight." He'd manipulate me into thinking my exes were awful and that my friends hated me. He even made bets with people about how long my partners would last before dumping me. In 2019, I finally moved out. I invited him over to help organize the place, and when he was about to leave, he grabbed my face really hard and tried to kiss me. I pulled away, but he held me so tightly that I had to duck under his arm to get free. We stared at each other in silence, and then he left. He later apologized, and because he was my only friend, I forgave him a week later. I shouldn't have. Then came the pandemic. He happened to be staying at a friend's house just a few blocks from me, and he asked for help dyeing his hair blue, so I went over, and I met his group of friends, and they were awesome. We bonded instantly, and we played board game nights, VR gaming, late-night talks. I loved hanging out with them. Gabriel didn't. He started getting upset that I was spending time with them instead of just him. One of the guys told me Gabriel had forced him to show our private messages to make sure nothing was going on between us. Gabriel suspected that his friend and I had a fling. Then came the jealousy, and something changed in his face. His eyes looked black, and his behavior turned erratic. He said he had multiple personalities. One was Mark, who tried to touch me several times and in some form abuse me. The other was Carl, some sleazy, overconfident alter ego. One night, as Mark, he told a story about meeting a girl at a bus stop in the middle of the night and having sex with her. As a woman, it sounded off. What kind of girl sleeps with a stranger at a dark bus stop? Was he lying? Bragging? Or worse, did he take advantage of someone? Things escalated. He said he was planning to get euthanized for depression. That's not legal in my country, so what the fuck? When I told him that, he said a lawyer would help him. What? Not long after, he accused me of stealing his mother's credit card, and I've never even met his mother. I've never even been to his city. And one night, I had an emergency and asked if he could watch my dog. He agreed, and when I came back early the next morning, the place looked clean. He said, "Hi, how are you?" and then left. But his Facebook was open on my computer. Something told me to check. He was messaging one of our mutual friends, calling me a slut, complaining that I gave attention to everyone but him and that the least I could do was have sex with him. I even found a picture he had sent to his friend where you can clearly see the outside of my house at night. It was sent at 4:53 a.m. I found messages to tons of women where he used my personal trauma to gain sympathy. He told everyone about my business, and then I found a conversation with a girl we both knew. He told her that we were in a long-term relationship, that I cheated on him and that I apologized to him, that we lived together, that I was toxic and manipulative. I felt sick. I reached out to her, and she said she'd always found it weird that he claimed we were dating but never posted a single photo of us. But then she told me something that made my blood run cold. One time, years prior, he used her phone and sent her own nudes to himself while she was taking a shower. She only noticed because he forgot to delete the sent message. And that's when I just knew that he had done that to me. I had a suspicion that he'd sent some pics from my number to his because one folder was open when I never look at my own nudes. That folder had a password. That's when I cut him off, blocked him everywhere, told all our mutual friends, and I even messaged him one last time to explain exactly why I never wanted to hear from him again as a courtesy. A year later, he messaged me from a new account. It started off like an apology, but quickly turned into blame. He said I ruined his life, that I should be proud of pushing him into depression, that I lied about not being in a relationship with him, and that he loved me. I blocked him again, and haven't heard from him since. So, Gabriel, Mark, Carl, whatever you want to call yourself, let's not meet again. Hey there, gang. Thanks for listening to this episode of Uncle Josh's True Scary Stories. If you have a true scary story of any nature that you'd like me to narrate, email it to unclejosh.truescarystories@gmail.com. I read them all. I appreciate all of your support no matter where you do so, whether it's likes on YouTube or elsewhere. And I might have a little favor to ask of you, too, about some rankings on another website that ranks True Scary Stories podcasts. More to come on that. If you'd like to take your support a step further, a link to my Patreon page is in the description, and maybe even consider purchasing some Uncle Josh or Campfire Crew merchandise. A link to my storefront at tpublic.com is down there in the description, too. Everyone, be excellent to each other. And until next time, be wary of things that go bump in the night. It could be anything. A ghost, a monster, or the guy next door.